All right, how do we create our custom exceptions? Well, it's really straightforward. So what we can do is we can create a class. So if I show you the exception class, have a look. So this is the exception class, and looking at any other exception. So for example, account exception, have a look. So this is a class from the JavaX security auth.login package. And basically all we have to do is extend a particular exception. So if I show you actually the arithmetic exception, so arithmetic exception, have a look. So arithmetic exception extends runtime exception. And then you basically have these two constructors, and that is it. Now all of this will actually start to make sense. So constructors, the super keyword, so on and so forth. But let's create our custom exception. So in here, I'm going to close this. And the first thing that we need to decide is whether this exception will be a checked or a runtime exception. Now, just for the sake of it, I'm going to create both. So I'm going to right click, new Java class. I'm going to say my, and then checked exception. And here, this has to extend exception. So this is a checked exception. Now, what I want you to do is, so in here, so this is our exception. So go ahead and right click and then generate and then override methods. And let's just pick this one, exception, and then message string. So what this is basically is the ability for us to pass a message into our exception. And you'll see this in a second. Next, let me duplicate this. And I've just pressed Command C. So Command C on this exception, Command V to paste it. And I'm going to say my unchecked exception. Now, in order for it to be unchecked, we have to extend runtime exception instead. And to be honest, this is it. Let's use it. So let's go back to main. And in here, let's basically have a method. So public, static, and then let's just say divide, for example, divide, or actually we have to return a number, divide, int a, and then int b, and we're going to return a divided by b. But before that, I want to make sure that b is not 0. So if, and then b equals to 0, let's just use the unchecked exception first. We're going to throw new, and then my unchecked exception. So this one here. And you see the message in here? So we have to pass a message. So that's why if I go back, I did add this in here. So if I remove this, you can see that this goes like this, just like that. But in order for me to pass a message, I need to have this. And this is the constructor, and you'll learn more about constructors later. But for now, just follow along. Let's just go back in here, and I'm going to say cannot divide by 0. Let's just use this. So here I'm going to say divide, and let's just print actually. So south divide 10 divided by 0. Oh, actually, sorry, this should be comma and then 0. If I run this, have a look. So this now throws exception in thread main com.amigos code, and have a look. My unchecked exception. So this is our custom exception, and the message was cannot divide by 0. So this is cool. Now, how do we use the checked exception? Well, let's say that we expect this method to throw a checked exception, i.e., before we even compile, we need to deal with it. Not that we need to do it for division by 0, but I'm just giving you an example of how to use both checked and unchecked exceptions. So in here, let's just flip this. So this will be checked exception, and I'm going to say throw. So let's just throw, and then my, and then checked exception. Now, if you remember, if it's a checked exception, we have to deal with it. So in our case, let's just basically, I'm going to put my mouse in here, more actions, surround with try and catch, just like that. Or I think if I put my mouse in there, have a look, you've got this bulb, click on the bulb, and then you can either say add exception to method signature, which basically throws in here. Or if I go back in here, put my mouse, and then wait for the bulb, surround with try and catch, and job done. If I run this, you'll see that cannot divide by 0, exit code 0. So we dealt with this exception, and in here we're not doing anything. So let me just say south and then e.get message. So you see how this works. There we go, cannot divide by 0. So this is pretty much how you create both checked exceptions by extending the exception class, and you're going to learn more about extends, the constructor, the public keyword, but for now they should be more or less easy. And then unchecked exceptions is the exact same thing, but we extend runtime exception. We extend runtime exception instead of exception. If you have any questions on this matter, please do let me know. Otherwise, catch me on the next one.